Houston is facing a foreclosure surge that most Americans aren't seeing. Entire neighborhoods are struggling as home costs, taxes, and insurance soar. And the story behind these numbers is worse than you think.
Houston, America's fourth largest city. Known for sprawling suburbs, booming construction, and apparently now the nation's foreclosure capital. Yep, you heard that right. Homes once seen as safe, solid investments are flipping into distress faster than anywhere else in the U.S. Today, we're diving deep into how Houston got here, the numbers, the neighborhoods, and the families caught in the middle. Let's break it down. Some states wobbled, some overheated, some quietly corrected, but few reversed as sharply as Texas. Texas used to represent expansion, low taxes, endless land, relentless immigration. Now, the data tells a different story. In 2025, Texas led the nation in foreclosure starts, with more than 37,000 filings and more completed bank repossessions than any other state. The migration engine that powered the boom slowed. Inventory surged, insurance spiked, taxes compounded. But statewide totals hide something important. Within Texas, one metro absorbed more of that damage than any other: Houston. Across the United States in 2025, foreclosure activity climbed to nearly 300,000 new filings, representing one of the highest annual totals in recent years. Foreclosure starts rose about 14% compared to 2024 as the housing market continued to adjust. In that broader national picture, Texas again stood out, leading the nation with more than 37,000 foreclosure starts. Other states with high activity included Florida and California. Within the nation's largest metropolitan areas, Houston ranked among the top 3 for foreclosure starts, alongside New York City and Chicago, with homeowners in all 3 cities facing elevated financial strain. Meanwhile, nationwide property repossessions, homes taken back by lenders after foreclosure, also climbed, with tens of thousands of bank-owned properties entering the market, another indicator of ongoing homeowner stress. States like Florida, Delaware, and South Carolina reported some of the highest foreclosure rates, showing how the crisis has uneven impacts across regions beyond Texas and its metros. Taken together, these trends show a housing market where stress is increasing for many families, not because of extreme lending failures, but because price corrections, economic pressure, and cost burdens are now hitting home. While foreclosures climbed, another challenge took shape. Housing inventory across major markets surged to levels not seen since the early 2010s, giving buyers unusual leverage in a once-seller's market. In Houston, months of supply expanded as existing homes lingered on the market, contrasting sharply with the rapid pace seen just 3 years earlier during the pandemic boom. Nationally, rising inventory figures pushed price growth to flatten or even retreat in some regions, challenging the narrative that home values would continue up indefinitely. Builders, once unstoppable, began to throttle new construction starts in response, as standing inventory outpaced demand and absorption slowed. Meanwhile, affordability pressures mounted as insurance costs, property taxes, and maintenance expenses rose faster than incomes for many homeowners. The convergence of rising costs, cooling demand, and growing inventory created a market where distress was no longer isolated. It was structural and spreading. Across Texas, the numbers pointed to rising stress. But when analysts zoomed closer, one metro consistently stood out: Houston. Among large U.S. metro areas in 2025, Houston ranked near the top for foreclosure starts, with thousands of homes entering the process as mortgage payments, insurance costs, and property taxes climbed. In some months, roughly 1 out of every 2,000 homes in the Houston area faced a foreclosure filing, placing the metro among the most active foreclosure markets in the country. But Houston isn't a single housing market. It's a patchwork of neighborhoods, from luxury districts with multi-million-dollar homes to rapidly expanding suburbs, built during the recent housing boom. And that difference matters, because when foreclosure pressure rises, it rarely spreads evenly across a city. Instead, the strain tends to concentrate in specific communities, often where home construction expanded the fastest, and where households stretched their budgets to enter the market. In Houston, those pressure points began appearing first in outer suburbs and fast-growing developments, areas where thousands of new homes were built during the boom years. Foreclosure pressure inside the Houston metro hasn't been evenly distributed. Certain neighborhoods have carried far more of the burden than others. Suburban communities in the west and southwest parts of the metro, including rapidly growing master plan developments, have experienced some of the sharpest increases in distressed properties. During the housing boom, these areas expanded rapidly, with thousands of new homes built to accommodate a wave of incoming residents from other states. But as mortgage rates rose, insurance premiums climbed, property taxes increased, monthly housing costs suddenly became far higher than many households expected. In several suburban zip codes, foreclosure filings began appearing on streets that only a few years earlier symbolized growth and opportunity. What once looked like endless expansion has, in certain pockets, become a real test of how resilient those communities truly are. Over the past year, foreclosure activity has continued to rise across several major U.S. housing markets. Nationwide, lenders initiated tens of thousands of foreclosure actions, reflecting a steady increase compared with the previous year. In many cities, the numbers remain relatively small compared with the housing crash of 2008, but the upward trend is drawing attention from economists and housing analysts. Among major metropolitan areas, Houston has repeatedly appeared near the top of the list for foreclosure starts. In several recent monthly reports, the Woodlands Sugar Land metropolitan area recorded more foreclosure starts than larger metros like New York City and Chicago. That doesn't necessarily mean Houston's housing market is collapsing, but it does signal that financial pressure is building in certain parts of the metro. Housing analysts point to a combination of factors behind the trend: rising mortgage costs, higher insurance premiums, and the growing tax burden many homeowners face. Across the United States, foreclosure activity continued to rise through 2025. According to national housing market reports, analysts found that tens of thousands of properties entered foreclosure filing status, a notable year-over-year increase compared with the previous year. In Texas, foreclosure starts remained among the highest in the nation, placing the state alongside others like Florida and California with elevated filing activity. Data from early 2025 shows that among major metropolitan areas, the Woodlands Sugar Land region ranked near the top for foreclosure starts, alongside large metros such as New York City and Chicago. That doesn't mean the housing market is collapsing, but it does signal sustained financial pressure in certain segments of the market, especially where housing costs are high and households are stretched thin. Factors such as rising mortgage rates, higher insurance premiums, and increased property taxes contributed to the strain for many homeowners. These combined pressures have reshaped the residential landscape in parts of Houston and beyond. What was once a period of rapid expansion and confidence for buyers and builders alike has now given way to an era of adjustment, where the realities of cost, credit, and market dynamics are creating lasting consequences for communities across the region. Foreclosure filings didn't slow in 2025. Instead, numbers quietly crept higher, month after month. Borrowers struggled to keep up with rising mortgages, soaring insurance, and climbing property taxes. In Texas, Florida, and California, new foreclosure starts surged sharply, surprising even seasoned analysts. Houston, alongside New York City and Chicago, saw pressure mounting on families as repossessions stacked up. Neighborhoods that once symbolized growth began showing cracks, and streets that previously thrived were now facing strain. Homeowners who had ridden the housing boom suddenly found themselves falling behind, forced to adjust on the fly. Rather than a market collapse, this is a housing sector shifting gears, where rising costs and economic pressure are pushing households to adapt. Communities are absorbing the impact, navigating an environment that's changing in real time. Amid these rising foreclosure numbers, Houston's residents are feeling the pressure firsthand. Families once confident in their homes now face mounting bills, with mortgage payments, insurance, and taxes piling up faster than many anticipated. Suburban streets that symbolized growth during the boom are now showing signs of strain. In certain zip codes, foreclosures have clustered together, creating neighborhoods where multiple homes face distress at the same time. Local economies are absorbing the shock. Small businesses, schools, and community services see subtle ripple effects as families adjust spending to keep their homes. The human side of the foreclosure crisis is quiet but persistent, a constant undercurrent beneath the national statistics. Yet, not all hope is lost. Some households are navigating the challenge, restructuring loans, negotiating with lenders, and finding ways to stay afloat despite economic pressures. These stories reveal resilience within communities, showing how people adapt when markets shift unexpectedly. The housing market isn't just numbers on a chart. It's families, neighborhoods, and entire communities learning to recalibrate in real time. For many homeowners, the foreclosure numbers are more than statistics. They represent families trying to keep up with payments in a market that changed faster than anyone expected. Only a few years ago, buying a home in places like Houston felt like a safe bet. Population growth was strong, jobs were expanding, and new neighborhoods seemed to appear almost overnight. But housing markets move in cycles. When borrowing costs rise and everyday expenses climb, even stable markets can begin to show pressure. What's happening now isn't the same kind of collapse seen during the financial crisis of 2008. Lending standards today are far stricter. Instead, today's stress is coming from a different place: rising ownership costs, insurance shocks, and the financial strain many households are feeling across the country. The question now isn't whether the housing market will change. It's how communities like Houston adapt to the next phase of the cycle, and who manages to hold on through it.